Thank you for being here today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, volunteers traveling from all corners of Pennsylvania. I know it's not as large a rally as we would like to have, but someday soon we will be allowed to gather in larger numbers. And thank you for press. Thank you for other organizational leaders who are gathering here with us today. I am Carol Kuniholm. I am the chair of Fair Districts PA, a nonpartisan coalition, a fiscal project of the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania, and a grassroots movement of thousands of Pennsylvanians working together for an independent citizens redistricting process. I'm here today with leaders of other PA organizations and some of our Fair Districts PA supporters to say it is time to fix Harrisburg, because bipartisan solutions deserve a vote. And right now, procedural rules make that almost impossible. I want you to imagine for a minute a beautiful Pennsylvania family farm, co-owned by two families who have farmed the same fields together for generations. For generations, they planned what to plant together. They labored in the summer sun together. They harvested and feasted together at the end of every season. But somewhere along the way, one family decided they should be the ones to choose the seeds, decide the schedule, assign the tasks, and enjoy the harvest. The other family objected, and quickly the conflict escalated until both families were spending their energy raking up seeds the other family planted and doing all they could to make sure the other family had no harvest to enjoy. Imagine cutting off tomato vines so the other side can't enjoy a vine-ripened tomato, ripping out knee-high corn stalks so no one else gets the credit for a plentiful sweet corn harvest. Soon both families are heading toward bankruptcy, hungry, bitter, and tired, still blaming the other side. That is the story here in Pennsylvania today. Instead of collaborating to solve real pressing problems, instead of sharing ideas and research on best practices to maximize our resources and provide innovative solutions, our legislative leaders have spent decades fine-tuning their opposition to the other party. Good ideas are blocked rather than have someone else get the credit. Much-needed solutions are sabotaged to maintain party advantage. Meanwhile, little gets done and the state slides backward in important metrics, with some of the poorest cities in the nation, some of the most underfunded schools, record numbers of unrepaired roads and bridges, fiscal stability now ranked 47th in the country in the annual U.S. News state ranking. A March 2022 Fox 43 investigation called attention to the deep brokenness of Pennsylvania's expensive full-time legislature. That report noted that in the 2019-2020 session, more than 81% of bills introduced never left committee. Many pressing policy concerns shared by a large majority of PA voters were completely ignored. A recent Franklin and Marshall opinion poll found that 73% of Pennsylvania voters believe it's more important for their party to support policies that appeal to a broad segment of voters, even if it requires compromising on some issues. Just 19% prefer a no-compromise approach. That message has not reached our legislative leaders' ears. Year after year, bills with broad bipartisan support are blocked by committee leaders, committee chairs, and legislative leaders. A 2012 study on the Democratic deficit ranked states by how well policy enacted reflected voter preference. Pennsylvania's score then was 33%. Tied for last place with West Virginia and Wyoming. A more recent assessment of state legislatures done in 2016 by Fair Vote and the Bipartisan Policy Center gave PA an agenda fairness score of 0. There are no mechanisms in place to ensure all legislators have a stake in what bills are enacted, and no rules in place to ensure bipartisan solutions get a vote. Despite assurances from current leadership that voters' voices are heard, we have watched with alarm as the trend appears to be moving in the wrong direction. Evidence suggests there is now even less collaboration, less attention to bills introduced by the minority party, and less interest in bills with clear bipartisan support. So far in this legislative session, no bills introduced by the minority party in the House have been given a vote on the House floor. Only one minority party bill introduced in the Senate has been given a final vote. Together, Fair Districts PA and the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania are launching the Fix Harrisburg campaign to ask for rules that ensure bipartisan solutions receive a vote. Legislators from all parts of the state and across the political spectrum should have a meaningful role in deciding what bills are enacted. We ask that bills with strong bipartisan support be given a vote in committee, and if voted out of committee, be given a vote on the chamber floor. If bills pass in one chamber with bipartisan support, the other chamber should respect that work with a corresponding vote. Right now, more than half the bills that pass from one chamber are ignored completely in the other. To return to my analogy of farm families destroying each other's work, the division has gone so deep that even within families, good work is destroyed rather than allow someone else to enjoy the harvest or the credit. The dysfunction is deep and needs to end. What happens here in this building impacts every one of us, every day, in more ways than we can count. Our children's schools, our internet access, our roads, our bridges, our air, water, wages, mental health, all are impacted by decisions made behind closed doors, far from public view. You'll be hearing next from organizational leaders working on issues that impact us all. Fair Districts PA doesn't hold positions on most of these issues. Instead, our position is that bills with bipartisan support should be given a vote. It is time to fix Harrisburg so those votes can happen. We'll hear now from Meg Pierce, the Executive Director of the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania.
Good morning. My name is Meg Pierce. I am the Executive Director of the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that has been advocating for free and equal elections and educating voters since our founding during the suffrage movement over 100 years ago. For years, the League has watched the General Assembly ignore governance issues of great concern to the people of Pennsylvania. We have supported a strict gift ban, limiting all gifts to a small amount and requiring contributions to be reported. We have supported automatic legislative calendaring, requiring all bills be given a vote. We support a requirement that committee chairs be elected by members and that committee membership reflect the ratio of party members to each chamber. These changes and more are essential to increase public trust and to improve public access to the legislative process. Most significantly, the League has been concerned about the conflict of interest in Pennsylvania's redistricting process for almost 4 decades. Despite well-documented bipartisan support for redistricting reform from citizens, rank-and-file legislators, local officials, and community leaders, despite all of it, committee chairs and majority leaders have blocked all redistricting reform in Pennsylvania for almost 30 years, even as gerrymandering of our district maps becomes more and more extreme. Gerrymandering discourages voters and destroys trust. This legislature's refusal to bring redistricting reform bills to a vote has further discouraged voters and further undermined trust. The League is still determined to see a genuinely independent Citizens Redistricting Commission enacted into Pennsylvania law, with clear, enforceable standards and a well-defined public input process. The failure to address these governance issues has resulted in some of the worst gerrymandering in the country, partisan gridlock, and a sense of entitlement to power that is pervasive in Harrisburg. It has resulted in a policymaking process that is confusing, discourages public participation, and limits any real reform. The League of Women Voters joins Fair Districts Pennsylvania and our partners in the call to fix Harrisburg, to make government work for the people, not for the powerful. I am pleased to now introduce Susan Spicka, Executive Director of Education Voters of Pennsylvania.
Hi there, thank you. Excited to be here. Thank you for districts for inviting me. So I'm Susan Spicka. I am the Executive Director of Education Voters of Pennsylvania. We're a statewide nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that works to get high quality schools in every community. We are here to talk about charter school reform. So taxpayers spend about $3 billion a year in tuition payments to charter schools, including about $1 billion that goes to cyber charter schools. Because the state eliminated the subsidy to help school districts make these payments in 2011, school districts are forced to cut programs and services for students in their districts or raise property taxes to pay these $3 billion in tuition bills. Because the charter school law has remained unchanged for 25 years, the calculations that are used to determine the tuition rates that districts pay are outdated. And the tuition that districts pay for cyber charter and special education students have no relationship to the actual costs of the charter schools providing students with an education. This means that hundreds of millions of school tax dollars are wasted every year as they're drained out of school districts and not invested in educating children. As of March 29th, 419 school boards, or 83% of Pennsylvania's school boards, have passed a resolution supporting the funding reforms proposed in House Bill 272 and House Bill 1749 that would more closely align the tuition payments with the actual costs. These resolutions demonstrate that thousands of locally elected Republicans and Democrats, the school board members, support these bills. In addition, both bills have strong bipartisan support, and in fact, House Bill 1749 is the prime sponsor is a Republican, Rosemary Brown. So I'm going to talk about House Bill 1749 because this is the issue that has been happening in Harrisburg for at least a decade. So House Bill 1749 would implement the recommendation of the Bipartisan Special Education Funding Commission from 2013 to apply the special education funding formula to charter schools and school districts alike so that the special education funding would actually be matched with the services that a student would receive. Under the current law, the special education funding formula doesn't apply to charter schools, so charter schools just get a lump sum payment for each special education student that's based on this irrational calculation and unrelated to the cost of services. So that means a charter school receives the same amount of funding for a student who needs a half an hour a week of speech therapy or a student who needs a full-time nurse every single day. So this system creates a perverse financial incentive for charter schools to admit students who have disabilities that require low-cost services and to exclude students who require more than minimal services because charter schools can reap a profit of $10,000 or more in special education funding per student when they only enroll students who have low-cost services. So, and then making it worse, charter schools are not required to spend the surplus special education funding they get from school districts on services for kids with disabilities. Instead, charter schools are allowed to keep the special education funding and waste dollars intended to serve children with disabilities on things like advertising, lucrative contracts with for-profit vendors, lavish CEO salaries, and more. In addition to wasting money, the legislature's special education funding system reduces school choice for students with disabilities who require slightly more services. An Education Voters of Pennsylvania report that's over on the table found that charter schools enroll far more than their expected share of students who require low-cost services and far fewer students who have higher special education needs. So our most vulnerable students are not getting the same school choice opportunities that other students are receiving. funding. So using the same funding formula for school districts and charter schools would save $175 million annually, and it would substantially reduce the incentive for charter schools to cherry pick some students and exclude other students. It would improve school choice opportunities for our most vulnerable kids. So we're here to say that legislators from all parts of the state and all across the political spectrum should have a meaningful role in deciding which bills are enacted, and bills with strong bipartisan support, like the charter school funding reform bills, they should be given a vote in committee, and if they're voted out of committee, they deserve a vote on the chamber floor. So thank you, and I am delighted to introduce Michael Pollack from the March on Harrisburg, who is up next.
A few years ago, I was in Tel Gezer, which is a small town in between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem in Israel. Tel Gezer is famous because there's a cornfield baseball field there, just like Field of Dreams. They recreated it. And next to the baseball field is an ancient Canaanite city called Gezer. And in the middle of this ancient ruin, there's an altar shaped like this, with a pit in the middle. And 3,000 years ago, this was where the Canaanites would come and sacrifice their children. The ramp would carry the child into the pit full of fire. This was a child sacrifice altar in the middle of a metropolitan area. And our teacher asked the class, "Does this still happen? Have you ever heard of this? Have you ever seen this?" And a friend of mine raised his hand. My friend is from Iran, and he said, "My father saw this happen during the Iran-Iraq War. 8-year-olds marched across minefields for the glory of the country, for the glory of the army. Child sacrifices." And my teacher said, "It's still happening, not just there, but all over. Here in Pennsylvania, we are constantly sacrificing our children. Constantly. And to what God? For what end? To the God of money, for the goal of power, for the goal of greed. Last night, 15% of children in Pennsylvania went hungry. 1 in 8 kids in this state before the pandemic was in deep poverty. We are sacrificing ourselves. For what? And then we're told, well, you can just come here, get justice from the government, get justice in the legislature, pass a law, change the situation, elect your guy, find some truth that way, get justice that way." So we come here. We come to this building where Teddy Roosevelt stood just there 115 years ago and told everybody here, "Don't be corrupt." We come to this hive of corruption, this den of thieves, and we look for justice. And what do we run into? A brick wall of corruption. I'm here to tell the truth today. And the truth is that this is not a democracy. This isn't close to a democracy. In a democracy, the majority rules. In a democracy, 50% plus 1 wins you a vote. But in Harrisburg, where this is not a democracy, and I see all the lobbyists walking by, I'm talking to you guys here. This is not a democracy. 6 gatekeepers manage this building. You need 4 votes to pass a bill. 4 votes makes a bill a law. Those 4 votes are overseen by 6 people, 6 gatekeepers, the committee chairs in the House and the Senate, the majority leaders in the House and the Senate, Speaker of the House, Senate President. Those 6 people have to approve those 4 votes for a bill to pass. There's 253 members here, but only 6 people matter. And if any one of those 6 is opposed, the bill dies. And that's it. Go elsewhere for justice. Too bad. If 1 out of 253 legislators says no, then the answer is no. Good luck. Try another state? What are we being told here every single day by this legislature? We're being sold false promises. Just go out and vote. Just do things the right way. Just go talk to your neighbors. And then what happens? We vote, not much changes. The state's gerrymandered. To even get on the ballot requires money. And to really win in a competitive district requires a lot of money. Then to amass any power here, you need money. How do you become the House Majority Leader? You raise enough money to dole out checks to all of your colleagues. Check the campaign finance records of everybody in this building. They have contributions coming in from leadership. They're buying votes. If you can't bring in over $1 million, you don't get to be a majority leader. So who determines who the majority leader is? Who determines who the Senate president is? The money. The people who have money determine how this building operates. At the end of the day, this is not a temple to the people of Pennsylvania. This is a temple to the false gods of gold and money. This is a hollow house, and it will collapse unless it gets its act together fast. Fast. No lie can live forever. It says in the Talmud, whoever takes a bribe brings great wrath into this world. This building runs on bribes. We're living through the wrath, and it's getting worse. This building can't even pass popular laws. So I think I'm here specifically to talk about the gift ban, which is a bill that we've been working on for a few years now. And we've run into what everybody else here has run into. The same problem. There's 6 people who run this show. They are placed into power by the lobbyists who have the money to give them money so they can buy off some colleagues and get more power. And what happens then? It's that whatever you want to accomplish, if it goes against the money, if it goes against the power, it doesn't happen. Your best bet is to try to sneak it into a budget code bill and hope nobody notices. It just doesn't happen. Money rules this place. This place operates by the wrong golden rule. The guy with the gold makes the rules instead of love your neighbor like you love yourself. So the gift ban, we got it. We have support in the House. We know we do. We've talked with everybody multiple times over, many times. Out of the 203 reps, we have a vast majority in support of the gift ban. They would vote for it. Some of them are in this rotunda right here. But we can't get it past gatekeeper number 2. We're working on it, but that's where we are. We're stuck. Gatekeeper number 4 on the Senate side is also going to be a challenge. And the absurdity, the frustration, is that I was just banned from the House Majority Leader's office. They brought in the whole police force. And I know they're listening. I know they can hear this. There were about a dozen police officers showed up because we were there to ask for a meeting. The nerve. A meeting to get them to call a vote on the gift ban to make bribery illegal. And while we were sitting there in the lobby, this was one of the most absurd things I've ever experienced in this building. 3 lobbyists walk past us in this building, and they have gifts in a bag. They have a bag filled with gifts, boxes, wrapped, bows on top. It's not supposed to be that literal, but that's what it was. Usually it's a check that you just kind of hand over at the breakfast fundraiser. You know, you do it quietly. You should have some shame. There should be some shame attached to this. It's none. It's out the window at this point. And so we keep fighting, and they keep telling us, do it the right way. Why can't you just do it the right way? Which is another way of saying, please go home and shut up. Please stop trying. Please allow us to continue the looting of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Please allow us to keep causing cancer with kids because of our fracking. Please allow us to keep allowing for children to be in deep poverty in this state. Please allow us to defund schools and have lead and asbestos in the schools in Philadelphia. Please allow us to continue to not solve your problems, but to only address the problems of our donors and the lobbyists that they send in to represent them. This place is fundamentally broken. You know, Alexander Hamilton in 1794 said, "I never cease to be amazed by the political putrefaction of Pennsylvania politics." I sympathize with him. I too never cease to be amazed. It's really stunning, and I know everybody here knows this. It's something that I've talked about with many representatives in many offices and many senators. Morale in this building is low. It's toxic. People here don't work well together. Lobbyists come in the back door and mess up good people's good progress. The money comes in at the end of the day and buys the agenda. This legislature is criminally inefficient. 2 sessions ago, we have data for, they passed 286 laws. 40 years ago, they were passing 600 laws a session. And most of the laws they pass now are bridge namers. And thank you to the press for covering that. It's a joke, and people are hurting. People are hurting, so we keep coming here for justice because, frankly, we don't know where else to go. And we're going to keep fighting and we're going to keep pushing until this is a democracy, until 6 gatekeepers don't determine every little thing about this building, until lobbyists can't walk in with big checks and buy their way out of trouble. And so we keep fighting. And it's heartening to be here with so many people, and together we march forward, because when we fight, we win. Forward together.
One step back.
And I'm supposed to introduce Pat Christmas. Pat, are you here? Hey, how are you?
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone. My name is Pat Christmas. I'm the policy director for the Committee of 70, which is a nonpartisan advocate for better government based in Philly, but where we also do a lot of work here at the state level in Harrisburg, especially on elections issues that we've been focused on for more than 100 years. We were founded in 1904. So I think we're picking up a theme here. There are a lot of common sense, common ground issues that just can't get traction in this building. And the one that I'm going to flag this morning is this thing called pre-canvassing. Pre-canvassing, it's a strange little term that actually we're the only ones in the country that use it, but it's just the pre-processing of mail-in ballots before polls close on election day. And the current law allows our county election officials to start processing these ballots at 7 o'clock in the morning. So that didn't used to be a big problem because previously we only had folks voting by absentee, right? Only absentee ballots, only for certain reasons. There wasn't that many. So our county election officials could do their precinct-based voting on Tuesday, right? Get the polling places open, get the voting machines out there, get the polling places staffed, and then process a few absentee ballots, maybe in the evening, and probably wouldn't affect an election anyway. But of course, that's not the case today. In any given county, it's thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of these ballots that have to be processed, and that's a big problem. That's a big problem. It creates a huge logistical crunch for these counties because they only have so many staff, so much space, and so much time. But also, because we can't process these ballots earlier, we have to wait longer for these results, right? During the day, these counties have to make sure those polls are working. Sometimes they can process the ballots at the same time, sometimes they can't, but I'm sure everyone here remembers, I'm sure the rest of the country remembers, in the November 2020 presidential election, we had to wait till the end of the week to figure out who had won the election at the top of the ballot. And unless we fix this little thing, we're going to be looking at a similar situation this year in our midterm election. So, it's one of these issues that it's purely administrative, shouldn't be political. All the election directors support it, who are, they're just apolitical administrators. The county commissioners, Democratic and Republican, support it. Experts, advocates across the spectrum support it. And there are a ton of lawmakers, both sides of the aisle, both chambers, that know this particular issue, this particular election issue, may be more than any of the others. I mean, there's a lot of controversial or more complicated stuff out there to discuss and debate. But this one is very straightforward, and we are having an awfully hard time getting this one issue addressed, especially when we have another high-profile, high-turnout pair of elections coming up. So, again, this is part of the theme here where it's a common-sense issue, lots of common ground, lots of bipartisan support, but we can't get this issue and the bill or two that actually addresses this issue in a decent way to move along. So, again, I'm very grateful to Carol and the Fair District's leadership team for everything they've done. Carol, I think it's what has been 6 or 7 years since Fair Districts got off the ground. This is a very critical and pivotal transition the organization and the coalition is making into these procedural rules. And this is another situation where unless this stuff doesn't get fixed, we're going to have a hard time addressing all these other issues that matter to residents across the state of Pennsylvania and stakeholders across the state of Pennsylvania. So thank you very much. And I'm going to hand it off to now Johanna Byrd from the National Association of Social Workers. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Johanna Byrd, Executive Director with the National Association of Social Workers Pennsylvania chapter. And I'm here to talk about telehealth, specifically Senate Bill 705. Pennsylvania is one of only a handful of states that does not have comprehensive telehealth legislation in place. Prior to the pandemic, it was kind of a mixed bag of like some insurance companies reimbursed for telehealth, some did not, and most practitioners did not practice telehealth. This issue is not specific to mental health, but being that mental health is primarily the focus of social workers, that's where I'm going to spend my time and attention. During the pandemic, waivers have been passed that allowed telehealth to practice. And throughout the last 2 years, many have become accustomed to having telehealth accessible. Again, that is for all healthcare settings, but in mental health, there is almost no differential between the effectiveness of treatment that is found in a physical practitioner's office and what is able to happen over telehealth. In fact, in many cases, it is more effective as people feel more comfortable in their own home, less impacted by mental health stigma, more able to manage to fit it into their schedules instead of managing childcare, transportation, employment-related issues, etc., and they've been able to access the treatment that they need. We recently did a survey of our members to collect some of the stories of people that have been impacted by telehealth and the availability, and the impact goes far beyond that of the pandemic. There are stories of people who were able to get treatment during ice storms, weather events, when they were managing 5 children at home and unable to get off work. There were stories of people who were depressed after the loss of a child and were literally too depressed to get out of bed, but were able to access treatment and talk to their therapist when they would not have been able to go to a physical treatment location. There are stories of people who were recovering from chemotherapy and still were able to maintain their mental health treatment. There are stories of students who went off to college and were able to maintain a relationship with their therapist from their home, as opposed to having to disrupt their treatment and find a new place and a new person with whom to form a relationship for that all-important therapeutic relationship. So those are the kinds of stories that we're hearing, and all of that will be disrupted whenever the waivers end. Those are scheduled to end March 31st. However, it is going through right now that it will be extended again until June 30th. However, that just kicks the can down the road. If a comprehensive telehealth legislation is not passed prior to whenever the waivers end, finally, whether that be March 31st, June 30th, December, or whatever of next year, if something has not been passed, then it will result in a disruption of services for literally millions of Pennsylvanians who have become accustomed to accessing treatment via telehealth and who no longer will have that as an option as it returns to its pre-pandemic state. The bill is extremely bipartisan. We have been unable to identify even one person who opposes this bill. There are partisan issues that impact. It has already passed the full Senate, and yet it sits in the House waiting for even its first committee vote. And we anticipate that there will continue to be partisan struggles that get in the way of this bill becoming law. We strongly support the position of fair districts in fixing Harrisburg to ensure that bipartisan solutions such as telehealth are guaranteed a vote. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it back over to Carol.
You've heard just a small sample of the kinds of bills that are stuck in this building. A small sample of the bipartisan solutions, some of them pressing, very much needed right now. Some of them have been pushed aside for decades. This is a sample. Think about what this state could be like if we had a legislature that could pass bipartisan solutions quickly, solve real problems for the people of Pennsylvania. We would thrive, our communities would thrive, our schools would thrive, our children would thrive. Right now, that's not happening. So we will continue to say, fix Harrisburg. We will throw this coalition as wide as we can. There are so many organizations, so many citizens who have come to Harrisburg for help and have realized a sad thing I heard a county election official from Armstrong County say on this pre-canvassing bill that Pat Christmas was referencing. She said, we learned long ago not to look to Harrisburg for help. We have to change that, and to change that, we have to fix Harrisburg. So visit fixharrisburg.com, sign our Fix Harrisburg petition. We'll be having a virtual forum Tuesday night at 7 o'clock on this issue to go into more depth about how the process works, how it should work, how we are impacted, and how we intend to call public attention on this issue, to make it an election issue, and to demand that we have rules in place so that bipartisan solutions receive a vote. Thank you so much for being here.